Qui-Gon Jinn is the maverick Jedi Master that unfortunately met his untimely demise at the hands of Darth Maul on Naboo. But what if he had survived the encounter? How would things have been different? Would Qui-Gon surviving change the course of galactic history as we know it? That's the question we're going to try and answer today, and we've got some very interesting theories that you need to hear. Let's first talk about the Jedi Order. In an order numbering in the tens of thousands, there were very few more headstrong than Qui-Gon Jinn. He was often at odds with the Jedi Council, and they saw him as somewhat of a more extreme Jedi. He would not break the restrictive Jedi code, but instead push it and reinterpret it, something which the Council and the Order as a whole often frowned upon. In general, the Jedi like to follow their strict guidelines and not stray from them, so for a Jedi like Qui-Gon to be constantly testing the boundaries was somewhat of a thorn in the side of the Council.
I gather the Council was not eager to validate that conclusion.
No, they were not, Master.
That's not to say they did not respect Qui-Gon. He was, in fact, considered for a position on the Jedi Council itself, but because of his inability to follow the code, he never quite achieved that elite position. Suffice to say, we think you can see what kind of Jedi Qui-Gon was. One of the most prolific things that he did was to believe in prophecies that other Jedi wrote off as nonsense, the most important one being the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. Qui-Gon believed that he had discovered that person in a young boy named Anakin Skywalker, who he took as his own apprentice, much to the Council's displeasure. Still, he died before any formal training could begin, with his first apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi taking up the task and training the boy that was to become Darth Vader. We realised that was a long-winded introduction segment, but we needed to get across how strong and wise Qui-Gon Jinn was. He didn't live by a code, as most Jedi did, and chose to live in the here and now. So how would things have changed going forwards? Well, first off, we'll tackle the topic of the Clone Wars. Qui-Gon was a lover of peace, and rarely if ever liked to resort to violence. We believe that Qui-Gon would have walked away from the Jedi Order in protest of their increasing involvement in the war. In Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, even Count Dooku, Qui-Gon's former master, admitted that his old Padawan knew how corrupt the Senate was. The Sith Lord believed, maybe rightly so, that Qui-Gon would have walked away and maybe even sided with him. We're not saying Qui-Gon would have turned into a Sith Lord, but he would have had extremely strong reservations, much as his old master Count Dooku did.
The Sith Lord is not to be trifled with, and I will not be there to protect you, my old Padawan.
If Qui-Gon had left the Order, it's entirely plausible that he would have survived the execution of Order 66, the galaxy-wide extermination of the Jedi. He was wise and careful enough to keep himself safe, and if he was able to avoid Inquisitors and detection from the Empire, he would have died peacefully of old age, in some new and distant life. This may well have been the most likely outcome if he had not been killed by Darth Maul on Naboo. One thing that might have kept Qui-Gon from leaving the Jedi Order is Anakin Skywalker, the young apprentice that he took on only days before his death. The task of training the boy had been passed to Obi-Wan Kenobi, and while Obi-Wan was a strong and proficient Jedi in his own right, he was not the right master for Anakin Skywalker. Kenobi was a very straight-laced and uptight Jedi, the perfect candidate for the Council, a position that he incidentally eventually got many years later. But what he wasn't was the right master for Anakin.
You're a great warrior, Anakin, but you'll need to prove yourself as your undoing.
Anakin was headstrong and often pushed and broke the rules, much like Qui-Gon once did. So we believe that if Qui-Gon had survived, he would have continued his training of Anakin. Qui-Gon would have been more open to letting Anakin explore the intricacies of the Force and test the boundaries, and in return, Anakin wouldn't have felt so restricted and limited. Qui-Gon may have even understood and supported Anakin's relationship with Padme, and not made him feel so alienated from the Jedi Order. This might just have prevented Anakin from turning to the dark side, and he may have turned out very much like Qui-Gon Jinn did. This is one of the biggest things that could have potentially been different had Qui-Gon survived. Now, these theories are all well and good, but we think that Qui-Gon's survival would have been quite the spanner in the works of Darth Sidious's master plan. We believe that if Qui-Gon had survived and stayed in the Jedi Order to train Anakin, Palpatine would have found it much more difficult to get his claws into the young and impressionable Padawan. In the official canon timeline, where Qui-Gon died, Anakin looked to Palpatine as a mentor and almost fatherly figure, thus making it easier for the Sith Lord to turn Anakin to the dark side. If Qui-Gon had survived, he would have been the one Anakin could turn to instead. this would not have been okay with Darth Sidious. We think that the Sith Lord would have tried to have Qui-Gon killed, whether via assassin, bounty hunters, an apprentice, or even by his own hand. Palpatine had a plan, and Qui-Gon was not part of it. The Jedi Master's survival would only have interfered with things and made it all the more difficult for Palpatine to achieve his final goal. He would need to be eliminated once and for all.
Qui-Gon Jinn, you allowed Maul to kill him.
All in service of our greater goals.
So, do you think the fate of the galaxy would have been completely different if Qui-Gon Jinn had survived? Comment with yes or no down below. Leave a reason too. It's always fun to read your theories. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and a subscribe to never miss an upload. And as always, may the Force be with you.